Go away, go back to your home. It was the forbidden voice of Munisai coming from inside the house, and it was a command. Musashi's mother arose slowly. She ran along a long stone embankment. Weeping, she ran into the river and waded toward the center. Unable to talk, the baby squirmed in his mother's arms, tried to tell her there was danger ahead. The more he fretted, the more tightly she held him. Her moistened cheek rubbed against his. Takezo, she said, are you your father's child or your mother's? Munisai shouted from the bank. His mother sank beneath the water. The baby was cast up on the pebbly bank, where he lay wailing at the top of his lungs amid blooming primroses. Musashi opened his eyes. When he started to doze off again, a woman, his mother, someone else, intruded into his dream and woke him again. Musashi could not remember his mother's appearance. He thought of her often, but he couldn't have drawn her face. Whenever he saw another mother, he thought perhaps his own mother had looked the same. Why tonight, he thought, the sake had worn off. He opened his eyes and gazed at the ceiling. Amid the blackness of the suit was a reddish light, the reflection from the embers in the hearth. His gaze came to rest on the pinwheel suspended from the ceiling above him. He noticed, too, that the smell of mother and child still clung to the bed covers. With a vague feeling of nostalgia, he lay half asleep, staring at the pinwheel. The pinwheel started slowly to revolve. There was nothing strange about this. It was made to turn, but not unless there was a breeze. Musashi started to get up, then stopped and listened closely. There was the sound of a door being slid quietly shut. The pinwheel stopped turning. Musashi quietly put his head back on the pillow and tried to fathom what was going on in the house. He was like an insect under a leaf, attempting to divine the weather above. His whole body was attuned to the slightest change in his surroundings, his sensitive nerves absolutely taut. Musashi knew that his life was in danger, but why? Is it a den of robbers? He asked himself at first, but no. If they were professional thieves, they would know he had nothing worth stealing. Has he got a grudge against me? That did not seem to work either. Musashi was quite sure he had never even seen Baiken before. Without being able to figure out a motive, he could feel in his skin and bones that someone or something was threatening his very life. He also knew that whatever it was very near. He had to decide quickly whether to lie or wait for it to come or get out of the way ahead of time. Slipping his hand over the threshold into the smithy, he groped for his sandals. He slipped first one, then the other, under the cover and down to the foot of the bedding. The pinwheel started to whirl again. In the light of the fire, it turned like a bewitched flower. Footsteps were faintly audible both inside and outside the house as Musashi quietly wadded the bedding together into the rough shape of a human body. Under the short curtain hanging in the doorway appeared two eyes, belonging to a man crawling in with his sword and sheath. Another, carrying a lance and clinging closely to the wall, crept around to the foot of the bed. The two stared at the bedclothes, listening for the sleeper's breathing. Then, like a cloud of smoke, a third man jumped forward. It was Baiken, holding the sickle in his left hand and the ball in his right. The men's eyes met and they synchronized their breathing. The man at the head of the bed kicked the pillow into the air, and the man at the foot, jumping down into the smithy, aimed his lance at the reclining form. Keeping the sickle behind him, Baiken shouted, "Up, Musashi!" Neither answer nor movement came from the bedding. The man with the lens threw back the covers. "He's not here," he shouted. Bacon, casting a confused look around the room, caught sight of the rapidly whirling pinwheel. "There's a door open somewhere," he shouted. Soon another man cried out angrily. The door from the smithy onto a path that went around to the back of the house was open about 3 feet, and a biting wind was blowing in. "He got out through here." "What are those fools doing?" Bacon screamed, running outside. From under the eaves and out of the shadows, black forms came forward. "Master, did it go all right?" asked a low voice excitedly. Bacon glowered with rage. "What do you mean, you idiot? Why do you think I put you out here to keep watch? He's gone. He must have come this way." "Gone? How could he get out?" "You're asking me, you thick-headed ass." Bacon went back inside and stamped around nervously. There are only two ways he could have gone. He either went up to Suzuka Fort or back to the Sioux Highway. Whichever it was, he couldn't have gone far. Go get him. "Which way do you think he went?" I'll go towards Suzuka. You cover the lower road." The men inside joined forces with the men outside, making a motley group of about 10, all armed. One of them, carrying a musket, looked like a hunter. Another, with a short field sword, was probably a woodcutter. As they parted, Bacon shouted, "If you find him, fire the gun, then everybody come together." They set off at great speed, but after about an hour came straggling back, looking hang-dog and talking dejectedly among themselves. They expected a tongue-lashing from their leader, but when they reached the house they found Bacon sitting on the ground in the smithy, eyes downcast and expressionless. When they tried to cheer him up, he said, "No use crying about it now." Searching about for a way to vent his wrath, he seized a piece of charwood and broke it sharply over his knee. "Bring some sake, I want a drink." He stirred up the fire again and threw on more kindling. Bacon's wife, trying to quiet the baby, reminded him there was no more sake. One of the men volunteered to bring some from his house, which he did with dispatch. Soon the brew was warm and the cups were being passed around. The conversation was sporadic and gloomy. "It makes me mad, the rotten little bastard. He leads a charmed life, I'll say that for sure." "Don't worry about it, master. You did everything you could." The men outside fell down on their job. Those referred to apologized shamefacedly. They tried to get Bacon drunk so he would go to sleep, but he just sat there, frowning at the bitterness of the sake, but taking no one to task for the failure. Finally, he said, "I shouldn't have made such a big thing out of it, getting so many of you to help. I could have handled him all by myself, but I thought I'd better be careful. After all, he did kill my brother, and Tsujikaze Tamer was no mean fighter." Could that Ronin really be the boy who was hiding in Oko's house 4 years ago? He must be. My dead brother's spirit brought him here, I'm sure. At first, the thought never crossed my mind, but then he told me he had been at Sekigahara, and his name used to be Takezo. He's the right age and the right type of person to have killed my brother. I know it was him. Come on, master, don't think about it any more tonight. Lie down, get some sleep. They all helped him to bed. Someone picked up the pillow that had been kicked aside and put it under his head. The instant Bacon's eyes were closed, the anger that had failed him was replaced by loud snoring. The men nodded to each other and drifted off, dispersing into the mist of early morning. They were all riff-raff, underlings of freebooters like Tsujikaze Tamer of Ibuki and Tsujikaze Kohei of Yasugawa, who now called himself Shishido Bacon. Or else they were hangers-on at the bottom of the ladder in open society. Driven by the changing times, they have become farmers or artisans or hunters, but they still had teeth, which were only too ready to bite honest people when the opportunity arose. The only sounds in the house were those made by the sleeping inhabitants and the gnawing of a few rats. In the corner of the passageway connecting the workroom and kitchen, next to a large earthen oven, stood a stack of firewood. Above this hung an umbrella and heavy straw rain capes. In the shadows between the oven and the wall, one of the rain capes moved slowly and quietly, inching up the wall until it hung on a nail. The smoky figure of a man suddenly seemed to come out of the wall itself. Musashi had never gone a step away from the house. After slipping out from under the covers, he had opened the outer door and then merged with the firewood, drawing the rain cape down over him. He walked silently across the smithy and looked at Bacon. Adenoids, thought Musashi, for the snoring was thunderous. The situation struck him as humorous, and his face twisted into a grin. He stood there for a moment, thinking. To all intents and purposes, he had won his bout with Bacon. It had been a clear-cut victory. Still, this man lying here was the brother of Tsujikaze Tamer and had tried to murder him to comfort the spirit of his dead brother, an admirable sentiment for a mere freebooter. Should Musashi kill him? If he left him alive, he would go on looking for an opportunity to take his revenge, and the safe course was doubtless to do away with him here and now. But there remained the question of whether he was worth killing. Musashi pondered for a time before hitting on what seemed exactly the right solution. Going to the wall by Bacon's feet, he took down one of the blacksmith's own weapons. While he eased the blade from its groove, he examined the sleeping face. Then, wrapping a piece of damp paper around the blade, he carefully laid it across Bacon's neck. He stepped back and admired his handiwork. The pinwheel was sleeping too. If it were not for the paper wrapping, thought Musashi, the wheel might wake in the morning and turn wildly at the sight of its master's head fallen from the pillow. When Musashi had killed Tsujikaze Tamer, he had had a reason, and anyway he had still been burning with the fever of battle. But he had nothing to gain from taking the blacksmith's life, and who could tell? If he did kill him, that infant owner of the pinwheel might spend his life seeking to avenge his father's murder. It was a night on which Musashi had thought time and again of his own father and mother. He felt a little envious as he stood here by this sleeping family, sensing the faint sweet scent of mother's milk about him. He even felt a little reluctant to take his leave. In his heart, he spoke to them. I'm sorry to have troubled you. Sleep well. He quietly opened the outer door and went out. The flying horse. Otsu and Jotaro arrived at the barrier late at night, stopped over at an inn, and resumed their journey before the morning mist cleared. From Mount Fudesute, they walked to Hyokinjaya, where they first felt the warmth of the rising sun on their backs. How beautiful! Exclaimed Otsu, pausing to look at the great golden orb. She seemed full of hope and cheer. It was one of those wonderful moments when all living things, even plants and animals, must feel satisfaction and pride in their existence here on earth. Jotaro said with obvious pleasure, "We're the very first people on the road, not a soul ahead of us. You sound boastful. What difference does it make? It makes a lot of difference to me. Do you think it will make the road shorter? Oh, it's not that. It just feels good to be first, even on the road." You have to admit it's better than following along behind plugins or horses. That's true. When no one else is on the road I'm on, when no one else is on the road that I'm on, I have the feeling it belongs to me. In that case, why don't you pretend you are a great samurai on horseback, surveying your vast estates? I will be your attendant. She picked up a bamboo stick and waving it ceremoniously, called out in sing-song fashion, "Bow down, all bow down for his lordship." A man looked up inquiringly from under the eaves of a tea house, caught playing like a child. She blushed and walked rapidly on. "You can't do that," Jotaro protested. "You mustn't run away from your master. If you do, I'll have to put you to death. I don't want to play anymore. You are the one who was playing, not me." "Yes, but you started it." "Oh my, the man at the tea house is still staring at us. He must think we are silly. Let's go back there." "What for? I'm hungry already." "Couldn't we eat half of the rice balls we brought for lunch now?" "Be patient, we haven't covered 2 miles yet. If I let you, you will eat 5 meals a day." "Maybe, but you don't see me riding in plugins or hiring horses the way you do." "That was only last night, and then only because it was getting dark and we had to hurry. If you feel that way about it, I'll walk the whole way today." "It should be my turn to ride today. Children don't need to ride." "But I want to try riding a horse. Can't I, please?" "Well, maybe, but only for today. I saw a horse tied up at the tea house. We could hire it." "No, it's still too early in the day." "Then you didn't mean it when you said I could ride." "I did, but you are not even tired yet. It would be a waste of money to rent a horse." "You know perfectly well I never get tired." "I wouldn't get tired if we walk 100 days and 1,000 miles. If I have to wait till I'm worn out, I'll never get to ride a horse. Come on, Otsu, let's rent the horse now, while there aren't any people ahead of us. It will be a lot safer than when the road is crowded, please." Seeing that if they kept this up, they would lose the time they had gained by making an early start, Otsu gave in, and Jotaro, sensing rather than waiting for her nod of approval, raced back to the tea house. Although there actually were 4 tea houses in the vicinity, as the name Yokenjire indicated, they were located at various places on the slopes of Mounts Fudatsute and Kutsukake. The one they had passed was the only one in sight. Running up to the proprietor and stopping suddenly, Jotaro shouted, "Hey there, I want a horse, get one for me." The old man was taking down the shutters, and the boy's lusty crying jarred him into wakefulness. With a sour expression, he grumbled, "What's all this? Do you have to yell so loud? I need a horse. Please get one ready right away. How much is it to Minakuchi? If it's not too much, I may even take it all the way to Kusatsu." "Whose little boy are you, anyway?" "I'm the son of my mother and my father," replied Jotaro impudently. "I thought you might be the unruly offspring of the storm god." "You are the storm god, aren't you? You look mad as a thunderbolt." "Brat, just bring me the horse." "I dare say you think that horse is for hire." "Well, it isn't, so I fear I shall not have the horse of lending it. I shall not have the honor of lending it to your lordship." Matching the man's tone of voice, Jotaro said, "Then, sir, shall I not have the pleasure of renting it?" "Sassy, aren't you?" cried the man, taking a piece of lighted kindling from the fire under his oven and throwing it at the boy. The flaming stick missed Jotaro but struck the ancient horse tied under the eaves. With an air-splitting whinny, she reared, striking her back against a beam. "You bastard!" screamed the proprietor. He leaped out of the house, spattering curses, and ran up to the animal. As he untied the rope and led the horse around to the side yard, Jotaro started in again. "Please lend her to me." "I can't." "Why not?" "I don't have a groom to send with her." Now, at Jotaro's side, Otsu suggested that if there was no groom, she could pay the fee in advance and send the horse back from Minakuchi with a traveler coming this way. Her appealing manner softened the old man, and he decided he could trust her. Handing her the rope, he said, "In that case, you can take her to Minakuchi or even to Kusatsu if you want. All I ask is that you send her back." As they started away, Jotaro, in high dudgeon, exclaimed, "How do you like that? He treated me like an ass," and then as soon as he saw a pretty face, "You better be careful what you say about the old man. His horse is listening. She may get angry and throw you. Do you think this feeble-jointed old nag can get the best of me? You don't know how to ride, do you?" "Of course I know how to ride." "What are you doing then, trying to climb up from behind?" "Well, help me up. You are a nuisance." She put her hands under his armpits and lifted him onto the animal. Jotaro looked majestically around at the world beneath him. "Please walk ahead, Otsu," he said. "You are not sitting right." "Don't worry, I'm fine." "All right, but you're going to be sorry." Taking the rope in one hand, Otsu waved goodbye to the proprietor with the other, and the two started off. Before they had gone 100 paces, they heard a loud shout coming out of the mist behind them, accompanied by the sound of running footsteps. "Who could that be?" asked Jotaro. "Is he calling us?" wondered Otsu. He stopped the horse and looked around. The shadow of a man began to take form in the white, smoky mist. At first they could make out only contours, then colors, but the man was soon close enough for them to discern his general appearance and approximate age. A diabolic aura surrounded his body, as though he were accompanied by a raging whirlwind. He came rapidly to Otsu's side, halted, and with one swift motion snatched the rope from her hand. "Get off," he commanded, glaring up at Jotaro. The horse skittered backward. Clutching her mane, Jotaro shouted, "You can't do this. I rented this horse, not you." The man snorted, turned to Otsu, and said, "You woman." "Yes, Otsu." "Yes," Otsu said in a low voice. "My name's Shishido Baiken. I live in Ujii village up in the mountains beyond the barrier. For reasons I won't go into, I'm after a man named Miyamoto Musashi. He came along this road sometime before daybreak this morning, probably passed here hours ago, so I've got to move fast if I'm going to catch him in Yasugawa on the Omi border. Let me have your horse." He talked very rapidly, his ribs heaving in and out. In the cold air, the mist was condensing into icy flowers on branches and twigs, but his neck glistened like a snakeskin with sweat. Otsu stood very still, her face deathly white, as though the earth beneath her had drained all the blood from her body. Her lips quivering, she wanted desperately to ask and make sure that she had heard correctly. She couldn't utter a word. "You said Musashi?" Jotaro blurted out. He was still clutching his horse manes, but his arms and legs were trembling. Baiken was in too much of a hurry to notice their shocked reaction. Come on now, he'd ordered, off the horse. And be quick about it, or I'll give you a thrashing. I'll give you a thrashing. He brandished the end of the rope like a whip. Jotaro shook his head adamantly. I won't. What do you mean you won't? It's my horse. You can't have it. I don't care how much of a hurry you are in. Watch it. I've been very nice and explained everything because you are only a woman and a child traveling alone. But isn't that right, Otsu? Jotaro interrupted. We don't have to let him have the horse, do we? Otsu could have hugged the boy. As far as she was concerned, it was not so much a question of the horse as it was of preventing this monster from progressing any farther. That's true, she said. I'm sure you are in a hurry, sir, but so are we. You can hire one of the horses that travel up and down the mountain regularly. Just as the boy says, it's unfair to try to take our horse away from us. I won't get off, Jotaro repeated. I will die before I do. You set your mind on not letting me have the horse, Baiken asked gruffly. You should have known we wouldn't to begin with, replied Jotaro gravely. Son of a bitch, shouted Baiken, infuriated by the boy's tone. Jotaro, tightening his grip on the horse's mane, looked little bigger than a flea. Baiken reached up, took hold of his leg, and started to pull him off. Now, of all times, was the moment for Jotaro to put his wooden sword to use, but in his confusion, he forgot all about the weapon. Faced with an enemy so much stronger than himself, the only defense that came to mind was to spit in Baiken's face, which he did again and again. Otsu was filled with grim terror. The fear of being injured or killed by this man brought an acid, dry taste to her mouth. But there was no question of giving in and letting him have the horse. Musashi was being pursued. The longer she could delay this fiend, the more time Musashi would have to flee. It didn't matter to her that the distance between him and herself would also be increased, just at a time when she knew at least that they were on the same road. Biting her lip, then screaming, "You can't do this," she struck Baiken in the chest with a force that not even she realized she possessed. Baiken, still wiping the spit off his face, was thrown off balance, and in that instant, Otsu's hand caught the hilt of his sword. Bitched, he barked, grabbing for her wrist. Then he howled with pain, for the sword was already partly out of its scabbard, and instead of Otsu's arm, he had squeezed his hand around the blade. The tips of 2 fingers on his right hand dropped to the ground. Holding his bleeding hand, he sprang back, unintentionally pulling the sword from its scabbard. The brilliant glitter of steel extending from Otsu's hand scratched across the ground, coming to rest behind her. Baiken had blundered even worse than the night before. Cursing himself for his lack of caution, he struggled to regain his footing. Otsu, now afraid of nothing, swung the blade sidewise at him. But it was a great white-bladed weapon, nearly 3 feet long, which not every man would have been able to handle easily. When Baiken dodged, her hands wobbled, then she staggered forward. She felt a quick wrenching of her wrists, and reddish-black blood spurted into her face. After a moment of dizziness, she realized the sword had cut into the rump of the horse. The wound was not deep, but the horse let out a fearsome noise, rearing and kicking wildly. Baiken, yelling unintelligibly, got hold of Otsu's wrist and tried to recover his sword, but at that moment, the horse kicked them both into the air. Then, rising on her hind legs, she whinnied loudly and shot off down the road like an arrow from a bow, Jotaro clinging grimly to her back and blood spewing out behind. Viking stumbled around in the dust-laden air. He knew he couldn't catch the crazed beast, so his enraged eyes turned toward the place where Otsu had been. She wasn't there. After a moment, he spotted his sword at the foot of a large tree and with a lunge retrieved it. As he straightened up, something clicked in his mind. There must be some connection between this woman and Musashi, and if she was Musashi's friend, she could make excellent bait. At the very least, she would know where he was going. Half running, half sliding down the embankment next to the road, he strode around a thatched farmhouse, while an old woman stooped like a hunchback behind a spinning wheel inside the house, looked on in terror. Then he caught sight of Otsu racing through a thick grove of cryptomeria trees toward the valley beyond, where there were patches of late snow. Thundering down the hill with the force of a landslide, he soon closed the distance between them. Bitch, he cried, stretching out his left hand and touching her hair. Otsu dropped to the ground and caught hold of the roots of a tree, but her foot slipped and her body fell over the edge of the cliff, where it swayed like a pendulum. Dirt and pebbles fell into her face as she looked up at Biken's large eyes and his gleaming sword. Fool, he said contemptuously. Do you think you can get away now? Otsu glanced downward. 50 or 60 feet below, a stream cut through the floor of the valley. Curiously, she was not afraid, for she saw the valley as her salvation. At any moment she chose, she could escape simply by letting go of the tree and throwing herself on the mercy of the open space below. She felt death was near, but rather than dwell on that, her mind focused on a single image, Musashi. She seemed to see him now, his face like a full moon in a stormy sky. Biken quickly seized her wrist and, hoisting her up, dragged her well clear of the edge. Just then, one of his henchmen called to him from the road. What are you doing down there? We better move fast. The old man at the tea house back there said a samurai woke him up before dawn this morning, ordered a box lunch, and then ran off toward Kagar Valley. Kagar Valley? That's what he said, but whether he goes that way or crosses Mount Suchi to meet Minakuchi doesn't matter. The roads come together at Ishibe. If we make good time to Yasugawa, we should be able to catch him there. Biken's back was turned to the man, his eyes fastened onto Otsu, who crouched before him, seemingly trapped by his fierce glare. Oh, he roared, all three of you come down here. Why? Get down here, fast. If we waste time, Musashi will beat us to Yasugawa. Never mind that, the three men were among those who had been engaged in the fruitless search the night before. Used to making their way through the mountains, they stormed down the incline with the speed of so many boars. As they reached the ledge where Biken was standing, they caught sight of Otsu. Their leader rapidly explained the situation to them. All right now, tie her up and bring her along, said Biken. Before darting off through the woods, they tied her up, but they couldn't help feeling sorry for her. She lay helpless on the ground, face turned to the side. They stole embarrassed looks at her pale profile. Biken was already in Kagar Valley. He stopped, looked back at the cliff, and shouted, "We'll meet in Yasugawa. I'll take a shortcut, but you stay on the high road and keep your eyes peeled." Yes, sir, they chorused back. Biking, running between the rocks like a mountain goat, was soon out of sight. Jotaro was hurtling down the high road. Despite her age, the horse was so maddened there was no stopping her with a mere rope, even if Jotaro had known how to go about it. The raw wound burning like a torch, she sped blindly ahead, up hill, down dale, through villages. It was only through sheer luck that Jotaro avoided being thrown off. Watch out, watch out, watch out, he screamed repeatedly. The words had become a litany. No longer able to stay on by clinging to the mane, he had his arms locked tightly around the horse's neck. His eyes were closed. When the beast's rump rose in the air, so did Jotaro's. As it became increasingly apparent that his shouts were not working, his pleas gradually gave way to a distressed wail. He, when he had begged Otsu to let him ride a horse just once, he had been thinking how grand it would be to go galloping about at rail on a splendid steed. But after a few minutes of this hair-raising ride, he had had his fill. Jotaro hoped that someone, anyone, would bravely volunteer to seize the flying rope and bring the horse to a halt. In this he was over-optimistic, for neither travelers nor villagers wanted to risk being hurt in an affair that was no concern of theirs. Far from helping, everyone made for the safety of the roadside and shouted abuse at what appeared to them to be an irresponsible horseman. In no time he had passed the village of Mikumo and reached the inn-town of Natsumi. If he had been an expert rider in perfect control of his mount, he could have shaded his eyes and calmly looked out over the beautiful mountains and valleys of Iga, the peaks of Nunobiki, the Yokata River, and in the distance, the mirror-like waters of Lake Biwa. Stop, stop, stop. The words of his litany had changed. His tone was more distraught. As they started down Koji Hill, his cry abruptly changed again. Help! He screamed. The horse charged down on the precipitous incline, Jotaro bouncing like a ball on her back. About a third of the way down, a large oak projected from a cliff on the left, one of its smaller branches extending across the road. When Jotaro felt the leaves against his face, he grabbed with both hands, believing the gods had heard his prayer and caused the limb to stretch out before him. Perhaps he was right. He jumped like a frog, and the next instant he was hanging in the air, his hands firmly wrapped around the branch above his head. The horse went out from under him, moving a little faster now that she was riderless. It was no more than a 10-foot drop to the ground, but Jotaro could not bring himself to release his grip. In his badly shaken condition, he saw the short distance to the ground as a yawning abyss and hung onto the branch for dear life, crossing his legs over it, readjusting his aching hands, and wondering feverishly what to do. The problem was solved for him when, with a loud crack, the branch broke off. For an awful instant, Jotaro thought he was done for. A second later, he was sitting on the ground and harmed. Phew was all he could say. For a few minutes he sat inertly, his spirit dampened, if not broken. But then he remembered why he was there and jumped up. Heedless of the ground he had covered, he shouted, "Otsu!" He ran back up the slope, one hand firmly around his wooden sword. What could have happened to her? Otsu! Otsu! Presently he met a man in a grayish red kimono coming down the hill. The stranger wore a leather hakama and carried two swords, but had on no cloak. After passing Jotaro, he looked over his shoulder and said, "Hello there." Jotaro turned and the man asked, "Is something wrong?" "You came from over the hill, didn't you?" Jotaro asked. "Yes." "Did you see a pretty woman about 20 years old?" "I did, as a matter of fact. Where?" "In Natsumi. I saw some freebooters walking along with a girl. Her arms were tied behind her, which naturally struck me as strange, but I had no reason to interfere." "I dare say the men were from Tsujikaze Kohei's gang. He moved a whole village full of hoodlums from Yasugawa to Suzuka Valley some years ago." "That was her, I'm sure." Jotaro started to walk on, but the man stopped him. "Were you traveling together?" he asked. "Yes, her name's Otsu." "If you take foolish risks, you will get yourself killed before you can help anybody. Why don't you wait here? They will come this way sooner or later. For now, tell me what this is all about. I may be able to give you some advice." The boy immediately placed his trust in the man and told him everything that had happened since morning. From time to time, the man nodded under his basket hat. When the story ended, he said, "I understand your predicament, but even with your courage, a woman and a boy are no match for Kohei's men. I think I better rescue Otsu, is that her name, for you. Would they hand her over to you?" "Maybe not for the mere asking, but I'll think about that when the time comes. Meanwhile, you hide in a thicket and stay quiet." While Jotaro selected a clump of bushes and hid behind it, the man continued briskly on down the hill. For a moment, Jotaro wondered if he had been deceived. Had the Ronin just said a few words to cheer him up, then moved on to save his own neck? Seized by anxiety, he lifted his head above the shrubs, but hearing voices, dug down again. A minute or two later, Otsu came into view, surrounded by the three men, her hands tied firmly behind her. Blood was encrusted on a cut on her white wood. One of the ruffians, shoving Otsu forward by the shoulder, growled, "What are you looking around for? Walk faster." "That's right, walk. I'm looking for my traveling companion." What could have happened to him? Jotaro, quiet. Jotaro was all set to yell and jump out of his hiding place when the Ronin came back, this time without his basket hat. He was 26 or 7 and of a darkish complexion. In his eyes was a purposeful look that strayed neither right nor left. As he trotted up the incline, he was saying, as if to himself, "It's terrifying, really terrifying." When he passed Otsu and her captors, he mumbled a greeting and hastened on, but the men stopped. "Hey," one of them called, "aren't you Watanabe's nephew? What's so terrifying?" Watanabe was the name of an old family in the district, the present head of which was Watanabe Hanzo, a highly respected practitioner of the occult martial tactics known collectively as ninjutsu. "Haven't you heard? Heard what?" "Down at the bottom of this hill, there's a samurai named Miyamoto Musashi, all ready for a big fight. He's standing in the middle of the road with his sword and sheath, questioning everybody who passes by. He has the fiercest eyes I ever saw." "Musashi's doing that?" "That's right, he came straight up to me and asked my name. So I told him that I was Suge Sanojo, the nephew of Watanabe Hanzo, and that I came from Iga. He apologized and let me by. He was very polite, in fact, said as long as I wasn't connected with Tsujikaze Kohei, it was alright. Oh, I asked him what had happened. He said Kohei was on the road with his henchmen out to catch him and kill him. He decided to entrench himself where he was and meet the attack there. He seemed prepared to fight to the finish. Are you telling the truth, Sanojo? Of course I am. Why would I lie to you? The faces of the three grew pale. They looked at each other nervously, uncertain as to their next move. You better be careful, said Sanojo, ostensibly resuming his trip up the hill. What? I don't know what we should do. Even our boss said this Musashi is unusually strong. Well, he does seem to have a lot of confidence in himself. When he came up to me with that sword, I certainly didn't feel like taking him on. What do you think we should do? We are taking this woman to Yasugawa on the boss' orders. I don't see that has anything to do with me. Don't be like that. Lend us a hand. Not on your life. If I help you and my uncle found out about it, he would disown me. I could, of course, give you a bit of advice. Well, speak up. What do you think we should do? For one thing, you could tie that woman up to a tree and leave her. That way, you could move faster. Anything else? You shouldn't take this road. It's a little farther, but you could go up the valley road to Yasugawa and let people there know all about this. Then you could surround Musashi and gradually hem him in. That's not a bad idea, but be very, very careful. Musashi will be fighting for his life, and he will take quite a few souls with him when he goes. You'd rather avoid that too, wouldn't you? Quickly agreeing with Sanojo's suggestion, they dragged Otsu to a grove and tied her rope to a tree. Then they left, but after a few minutes returned to tie a gag in her mouth. That should do it, said one. Let's get going. They dived into the woods. Jotaro, squatting behind his leafy screen, waited judiciously before raising his head for a look around. He saw no one, no travelers, no freebooters, no Sanojo. Otsu, he called, prancing out of the thicket. Quickly finding her, he undid her bonds and took her hand. They ran to the road. Let's get away from here, he urged. What were you doing hiding in the bushes? Never mind, let's go. Just a minute, said Otsu, stopping to pat her hair, straighten her collar, and rearrange her obi. Jotaro clicked his tongue. This is no time for primping, he wailed. Can't you fix your hair later? But that rolling, said Musashi, was at the bottom of the hill. Is that why you have to stop and make yourself pretty? No, of course not, said Otsu, defending herself with almost comic seriousness. But if Musashi is so near, we don't have anything to worry about. And since our troubles are as good as over, I feel calm and safe enough to think of my appearance. Do you believe that Ronin really saw Musashi? Of course. By the way, where is he? He just disappeared. He's sort of strange, isn't he? Shall we go now? Said Otsu. Sure, you are pretty enough. Jotaro, just teasing. He looks so happy. You look happy too. I am, and I don't try to hide it the way you do. I will shout it so everybody can hear. I'm happy. He did a little dance, waving his arms and kicking his legs, then said, It will be very disappointing if Musashi isn't there, won't it? I think I'll run on ahead and see. Otsu took her time. Her heart had already flown to the bottom of the slope faster than Jotaro could ever have ran. I look frightful, she thought as she surveyed her injured foot and the dirt and leaves stuck to her sleeves. Come on, called Jotaro. Why are you poking around? From the lilt in his voice, Otsu felt certain that he had spotted Musashi. At last, she thought. Until now, she had had to seek comfort within herself, and she was tired of it. She felt a measure of pride both in herself and toward the gods for having remained true to her purpose. Now that she was about to see Musashi again, her spirit was dancing with joy. This elation, she knew, was that of anticipation. She could not predict whether Musashi would accept her devotion. Her joy at the prospect of meeting him was only slightly tarnished by a gnawing premonition that the encounter might bring sadness. On the shady slope of Koji Hill, the ground was frozen, but at the tea shop near the bottom, it was so warm, flies were flying around. This was an inn town, so of course the shop sold tea to travelers. It also carried a line of miscellaneous goods required by the farmers of the district, from cheap sweets to straw boots for oxen. Jotaro stood in front of the shop, a small boy in a large and noisy crowd. "Where's Musashi?" She looked around searchingly. "He's not here," replied Jotaro dispiritedly. "Not here? He must be. Well, I can't find him anywhere, and the shopkeeper said he hasn't seen a samurai like that around. There must have been some mistake." Jotaro, though disappointed, was not despondent. Otsu would have readily admitted that she had had no reason on earth to expect as much as she had, but the nonchalance of Jotaro's reply annoyed her. Shocked and a little angry at his lack of concern, she said, "Did you look for him over there?" "Yes." "How about behind the cushion milepost?" "I looked. He's not there." "Behind the tea shop?" "I told you he isn't here." Otsu turned her face away from him. "Are you crying?" he asked. "It's none of your business," she said sharply. "I don't understand you. You seem to be sensible most of the time, but sometimes you act like a baby. How could we know if Sanojo's story was true or not? You decided all by yourself that it was, and now that you find it wasn't, you burst into tears." "Women are crazy," Chotaro exclaimed, bursting into laughter. Otsu felt like sitting down right there and giving up. In an instant, the light had gone out of her life. She felt as bereft of hope as before. No, more so. The decaying milk teeth in Shotaro's laughing mouth disgusted her. Angrily, she asked herself why she had to drag a child like this around with her anyway. The urge swept over her to abandon him right there. True, he was also searching for Musashi, but he left him only as a teacher. To her, Musashi was life itself. Shotaro could laugh everything off and return to his normal cheerful self in no time, but Otsu would for days be deprived of the energy to go on. Somewhere in Jotaro's youthful mind, there was the blithe certainty that one day, sooner or later, he would find Musashi again. Otsu had no such belief in a happy ending. Having been too optimistic about seeing Musashi today, she was now swinging toward the opposite extreme, asking herself if life would go on like this forever, without her ever again seeing or talking to the man she loved. Those who love seek a philosophy, and because of this are fond of solitude. In Otsu's case, often that she was, there was also the keen sense of isolation from others. In response to Chotaro's indifference, she frowned and marched silently away from the tea shop. Otsu, the voice was Sanojo's. He emerged from behind the cushion milepost and came toward her through the withered underbrush. His scabbards were damp. "You weren't telling the truth," Jotaro said accusingly. "What do you mean? You said Musashi was waiting at the bottom of the hill. You lied." "Don't be stupid," said Sanojo reproachfully. "It was because of that lie that Otsu was able to escape, wasn't it? What are you complaining about? Shouldn't you be thanking me?" You just made up that story to fool those men, of course. Turning triumphantly to Otsu, Jotaro said, "See, didn't I tell you?" Otsu felt she had a perfect right to be angry with Jotaro, but there was no reason to nurse a grudge against Sanojo. She bowed to him several times and thanked him profusely for having saved her. Those hoodlums from Suzuka are a lot tamer than they used to be, said Sanojo. But if they are out to waylay somebody, he's not likely to get over this road safely. Still, from what I hear about this Musashi you are so worried about, it sounds to me like he's too smart to stumble into one of their traps. Are there other roads besides this one to Omi? Asked Osu. There are, replied Sanojo, raising his eyes toward the mountain peaks sparkling dazzlingly in the midday sun. If you go to Eager Valley, there's a road to Ueno, and from Arno Valley, there's one that goes to Yokkaichi and Kuwana. There must be 3 or 4 other mountain paths and shortcuts. My guess is Musashi left the high road early on. Then you think he's still safe? Most likely. At least safer than the 2 of you. You haven't been rescued once today. But if you have been rescued once today, but if you stay on this high road, Tsujikaze's men will catch you again at Yasugawa. If you can stand a rather steep climb, come with me and I'll show you a path practically nobody knows. They quickly ascended. Sanojo guided them up above Kager village to Makado Pass, from which a path led down to Saito in Otsu. After explaining in detail how to proceed, he said, "You are out of harm's way now. Just keep your eyes and ears open and be sure to find a safe place to stay before dark." Otsu thanked him for all he had done and started to leave, but Sanojo stared at her and said, "We are pardoned now, you know." The words seemed fraught with meaning, and there was a rather hard look in his eyes. All along, he continued, "I've been thinking, is she going to ask now? But you never did ask." "Ask what? My name?" "But I heard your name when we were on Koji Hill. Do you remember it? Of course, you are Suge Sanojo, and you are the nephew of Watanabe Hanzo. Thank you. I don't ask you to be eternally grateful to me or anything like that, but I do hope you will always remember me. Why, I'm deeply indebted to you." "That's not what I mean. What I want to say is, well, I'm still not married. If my uncle weren't so strict, I would like to take you to my home right now, but I can see you are in a hurry. Anyway, you will find a small inn a few miles ahead where you can stay overnight. I know the innkeeper very well, so mention my name to him. Farewell." After he was gone, a strange feeling came over Otsu. From the outset, she had not been able to figure out what sort of person Sanojo was, and when they had parted, she felt as though she had escaped from the clutches of a dangerous animal. She had gone through the motions of thanking him. She did not really feel grateful in her heart. Jotaro, in spite of his tendency to take to strangers, reacted in much the same way. As they started down from the pass, he said, "I don't like that man." Otsu did not want to speak badly of Sanojo behind his back, but she admitted she did not like him either, adding, "What do you suppose he meant by telling me that he was still single? Oh, he's hinting that one day he's going to ask you to marry him. Why, that's absurd." The two made their way to Kyoto without incident, albeit disappointed at not finding Musashi at any of the places where they had hoped to. Neither on the Iake side or lakeside neither on the lakeside in Omi, nor at the Kara Bridge in Sator, nor at the barrier in Osaka. From Kiyage, they plunge into the year-end crowds near the Senjo Avenue entrance to the city. In the capital, the house fronts were adorned with the pine branch decorations traditional during the New Year's season. The sight of the decorations cheered Otsu, who, instead of lamenting the lost chances of the past, resolved to look forward to the future and opportunities it held for finding Musashi.